Hello and welcome to the Stool Pigeons. I'm Harrison Davenport.
And I'm Jack Jameswood.
Jack, I believe you have a story for us this week.
Yes, I do. This comes from r/cheating stories, and the title is Adopted Brother, Bitcoin, and Cheating. The only name changed is my adopted brother, Jake. I know he uses Reddit. I changed his name, not for his protection, but my self-preservation. I'm trying to get a job at the moment, and I've seen too many people on Reddit and elsewhere that have gotten fired or lost opportunities for employment for writing even non-offensive things, so I'm not willing to risk it. My wife and I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. She grew up here. I grew up in the western part near Asheville. When COVID struck, I got laid off from my company. For this post, I will avoid being more specific than saying I previously worked in marketing. My wife Claire works for herself. She's a wedding photographer. Most of her work dried up too. She's been doing freelance work online and other minor stuff like doing some work for her friends who own small businesses, logos, t-shirt design, things like that. My unemployment along with her side gigs meant we were financially strained this year, more than usual. But we never went hungry or anything like that. Plus the student loan moratorium has been a godsend, but we had to drop our insurance because Cobra was too expensive. That said, we are still better off than many people our age. I should say money is only necessary to us in one sense. We want children. But both of us will be 35, so the window is narrowing. And it's irresponsible to raise children if you cannot provide for them. We've calculated the cost and we would need a substantial sum to do that. Currently, we do not find ourselves in a realistic situation where that would be a possibility. I'm one of 3 children. I have an adopted brother, Jake. My parents were, and remain, evangelical Christians of the anti-abortion type. While I disagree with my parents on politics and religion, at least they lived out their principles by adopting Jake. I'm convinced if I gave them truth serum, they would probably say they regret the decision. He's 5.5 years younger than me. By any metric, Jake is a failure. In elementary school, they called him hyperactive and put him on Ritalin. That didn't seem to help. In my estimation, he's an idiot. Someone that makes poor decisions and despite negative consequences, never learns or grows from the process. For example, he got suspended from high school for pissing in a Gatorade bottle after a track meet, handing it to a girl that wouldn't go to prom with him. In the last days of high school, he superglued the locks on the high school's main entrance a day before graduation. My family attended church with the superintendent, which stopped the school district from turning the incident over to police. However, my parents paid a substantial amount of damages for the doors. That summer, Jake got arrested for vandalism at Belle Cherie, a street festival now defunct because of precisely this sort of activity. Jake moved to Greensboro for college. My father gave me $500 every month, a bribe, to let Jake live with me. In the long run, this was a terrible deal. Claire, then my girlfriend, had moved in with me. Jake, of course, failed out of college by the first year. The only thing he did on campus was drink and party. My parents paid his tuition, likely as a bribe to keep him away from them for good. He told my now wife about failing out of college and all that, but not me. By the end of that summer, I couldn't take it anymore. He was a slob, never cleaned up after himself, ate all my leftovers, swiped money left on any surface. He would come out of his room drunk and make an ass out of himself whenever I had guests over. I wish I would have never accepted that money from my father. I kicked him out when I discovered he was selling weed out of my house. He had very little respect for me. He would invite people over at all hours of the night. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and there'd be random people I didn't know smoking cigarettes and God knows what else in the backyard at 3 a.m. After tolerating small slights and annoying behavior, one of his friends, rang the doorbell at 2 a.m. on a weekday. Even then, I didn't freak out. But then they turned on the music. Not just turned it on, but had it playing through the speakers. I told my wife, "That's it," and thought his bullshit was funny. She said, they're just having a good time. Leave him alone. That night, I told him he had better be gone in the morning. I didn't care where he went. I didn't care at that point if he lived on the street. But he wasn't living with me. And to my surprise, he was gone. I was more surprised that he didn't leave a mess behind. We didn't speak for a while. He moved in with friends. Somehow, probably my parents, were giving him money to keep him away from them. He got a crappy apartment with a few roommates. For a few years, we didn't get along. From what I could tell, Jake didn't seem to thrive. He got fired from delivery jobs for doing things like not showing up for work or showing up for work, but drunk. The only steady position he ever had was mowing lawns, a job he did intoxicated. He was still selling drugs, mostly weed and mushrooms. He was growing mushrooms in his apartment. A year after I threw him out of my house, we were getting along much better. He apologized. I told him I thought it was stupid that he was selling drugs and that he would get arrested. He told me he sold them on Silk Road. I don't know how many people are familiar with Silk Road, but the transactions took place in Bitcoin. For a couple of years, he accumulated tons of them. Most of them he sold off before they hit $1,000. But he kept them because Bitcoin was associated with the dark web and hacking, and he thought it made him look cool. He claims he had a few thousand of them at one point. I don't know whether that's true. Either way, whatever he had, most of them he lost. But he thought he was a genius for being an early adopter of crypto, even though it was pure luck. I also know that whatever he has, he lost a majority during the crypto boom a couple years ago, where he sold most of his Bitcoin and then bought a lot of other speculative currencies. Some of them panned out like Ethereum, most did not. About 3 weeks ago, after we had all gotten our COVID shots, Jake came over for dinner. He brought top shelf whiskey and some Frankenstein weed. I rarely drink or smoke, but it was a weekend and we were all celebrating our shots by having a lovely evening by the fire in my backyard. I don't know about my wife, but I was pretty spacey, but enjoying myself. We were all talking about children and how we would like to have some in the future, but we're waiting until we had a more reliable source of income. Plus, before we set any plans for a child, we wanted to get things like insurance straightened out. Jake smiled and said something like, well, I'd part with 2 of my Bitcoins if you let me sleep with Claire. You know, I might even consider parting with 1 for a blowjob. Now, Jake says dumb shit like that all the time. Namely cracking jokes about how he's going to bang my wife because he knows it gets a rise out of me. This happened 2 weeks ago. On the one hand, considering letting my adopted brother sleep with my wife is depraved. It is cheating. Half of me was serious about pushing the conversation, but then there was something about trying to encourage my wife to do it that struck me as wrong. In bed, I mentioned the topic to my wife, seeing how she would respond. She laughed and then continued to scroll on her phone. She giggled a bit and said, could you imagine what we would do with that money? That's more money than we've ever seen. I asked, would you do it? She said, no, because I know you would never be okay with that. I said, but what if I was okay with that? And she said, hell yeah, that's a lot of money. I texted Jake about the fireside chat we had. He apologized if it pissed me off. I texted him, you wouldn't do it? He wrote back, LOL. No, I totally would, but you'd kill me. So I mentioned it again, and he wrote back, LOL, and then didn't respond for a while. I called him later, and we agreed to set it up. We couldn't do it 2 weekends ago because my wife had a wedding to shoot. When she returned, she surprised me with a new laptop and a brand new television. I thought nothing about it since it wasn't unusual for her to get paid quite a lot for a wedding. Last weekend, Jake came over to our house. We were all in the living room. My wife and I were very nervous. Jake was relaxed. Look, how about this? How about just a blowjob, but for still 2 Bitcoins? But I want you to film it. He then added, hang on, discuss it among yourselves. I gotta get something for Claire in my car. Claire and I discussed it and decided it was worth the price. He came back inside and handed her a lace thing. I thought it was lace panties, but no, it's a lace mask for her to wear because he knows that I believe if we recorded it, he'd post it on the internet, which he probably would. Okay, you want to get started? Jake said. Rub my leg to help me get going. Claire rubbed his inner thigh and he said, yeah, that feels good, just a little longer. A minute or 2 went by and he said, okay, start recording. Claire, are you ready? She nodded her head. Why don't you take it out? Start by unzipping my pants slowly. I got aroused by this. Claire unzipped his pants. Jake said, okay, take it out. My wife grabbed the top of his boxers and he screamed, oh my God, you guys are sick. You were gonna go through with it. Oh my God, you must have a low opinion of me. Dude, I'll give you the money. Here, I can cash app you $5,000 right now. And he did. It was at this point I was relieved that nothing was going to happen. I joked, well, at least let Claire show you her boobs. And he said, oh, I've seen those. I could tell by the look on Claire's face he wasn't joking. Claire bought the new TV and laptop I'm writing on because she had sent him topless pics while she was gone to the wedding. I blew up at Jake and told him to leave. Now that the Bitcoin thing had turned into a prank, I felt kind of betrayed. I had agreed to let Claire have sex with Jake, even a film blowjob, but I'm still pissed that she sent him topless pics and he sent her money. I don't know who I'm mad at, probably Jake, but both me and Claire consented to her having sex with him. The whole thing has been a mess. Terrible for our relationship. I regret it. I've been fighting with Claire for several days now. I don't even know if this is cheating. Is it? If so, who is to blame? I blame everyone. I blame Jake. I blame Claire. I blame myself, most of all, for being an idiot and inviting things into our relationship I thought I could handle when clearly I couldn't. So, Harrison, do we have any good comments?
Yes. The first comment from Dexter1437. This person writes, "Good job adopting cryptocurrency into your story. What will be your next step? Leasing your wife for some Dogecoin?"
Yeah, I would hope not, Harrison, because I don't know if Dexter1437 knows this, but Bitcoin is going for about $60,000 while Dogecoin is going for less than 50 cents. So I would hope that if he does lease her out for Dogecoin, it would be for tens of thousands of Dogecoin as opposed to just one.
Yeah, it seems like that person does not understand cryptocurrency very well. Our next comment comes from Neat Character 4. "It's smart and wonderful that you guys want to make sure you can provide a good life for your child before you bring a new person into this world. That's definitely the right thing to do. And I'm very glad to hear you were raised by evangelicals that own up to their beliefs and go and adopt when they don't believe in choice. As a woman, I do firmly believe in a woman's choice, but I appreciate it when I see the people who are against it own up and take responsibility for at least one of these children. But with all due respect, if my husband even entertained the idea of me having sex for money so we can raise a child, I would leave him. I'm sorry to say, but in this scenario, you were the pimp, your wife the hooker, and your brother was the client. Women can have children well into their 40s if they freeze their eggs, and it's a relatively decent priced procedure if you want to look into it. But bringing someone into the world after you tried to pimp out the child's mother to his/her uncle might be a tough hurdle to get through. All three of you will probably need a lot of time to heal before you can think of expanding your family."
Yeah, it does raise a lot of issues, mostly consent. It seems like Claire, the wife, consented to this, so, I don't know. I also am for, legalizing or at least decriminalizing sex work, because I think women should be able to choose what they do with their body. I think the same case applies here with Claire. So I think we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys for listening.